So, like there will be multiple things that you need to cover for uh, for the cost to be exact. Work breakdown structure. What is a work breakdown structure? Breakdown structure is to divide the work or the project into small manageable activities. Complex tasks, you can say, that are long and complex, not in terms of difficulty, but complex in terms of timeline, that are big tasks. You can broke them into small subtasks and then refine it, and that is known as work breakdown structure. So there are many ways to breaking down the activities in a project, but the most usual is work package, task, activities, deliverables, or milestones. Work breakdown structure framework. It is a framework for dictating the number of levels and the nature of each level may be imposed on work breakdown structure. So IBM have has recommended 5 levels for the work breakdown structure. So the first will be project. Like at the root node, you will have the the first node will be project, the second will be deliverables, and then so on. Then we'll have components, then we'll have activities, and then we'll have tasks. So you can start with the project can be divided into deliverable like software, manuals, training courses, which can be divided into components like the key work items which need to produce these deliverables like modules and tests required. And then components are divided into activities can be work packages which are major work items, or the collection of tasks. And then tasks are you can say small individual activities that can be performed by the single person. So that this is basically hierarchy. This is the goal. Then we have activity, and activity is then divided into tasks. So, like for example, if we have developed software project, that can be divided into project management, concept refinement, system design, construction, and implementation. Then project management is divided into develop plans, implement plans, monitor progress. This is kind of a work breakdown structure for software development project. Another example is, for example, if we have bicycle can contain frame set, crankset, wheels, braking system, shifting system, integration, and project management. Like wheels can be divided into front wheels and rear wheels. Frame can be divided into frame, handlebar, fork, and seat. So integration can also be divided into concept, design, assembly, testing, and testing can be divided into component, product, or customer testing. So, for example, if you have website, a blog website, so that can be post and pages, comments, share content. So this is one aspect. What you can do is you can have front end and back end as well. You can have it as requirement, design, coding, testing as well. So there can be multiple divisions depending on your perception. Then we have activity planning. Need to develop a schedule in which planned start and end dates are assigned to all activities. So once you have the activities or the work breakdown structure, you need to assign start and end date to these activities. So you for that you have to discover activity precedence and dependencies, activity duration, and available resources. First, you have to define activities, then sequence activities using uh, CPM method, critical path method, and then estimate time using PERT technique. Task dependencies. So, for example, you have relationships. There can be four dependencies or four types of relationship between two tasks. One is finish to task. Finish to task means task B cannot start until task A has finished. Start to start, task B cannot start until task A has started. Finish to finish, task B cannot finish until task A finishes. Start to finish, task B cannot finish until task A starts. So these are the four type of dependencies that that you will use in your project. Normally, the common type of dependency is uh, finish to start. Task B cannot start until task A finishes. So this is the most common activity or the most common dependency that you will see in the projects. Scheduling a precedence, like for example, you have design and coding. So coding, if we are assigning it finish to start, so design once the design is finished, then you can start coding. Start to start, it means debugging will start when the testing will start. So debugging cannot be started unless the testing phase is achieved. For example, if you are in coding phase, we don't do debugging. Normally, debugging is done when the testing phase is done. Finish to finish, like unit testing cannot be finished unless coding is finished. Like for example, you are developing or you are coding, so you, for each module that you code, you have to do unit test as well. So unit test is not finished unless coding is finished. Bug fixing and release, you cannot release the project until bug fixing is finished. So these are four types of relationship that you have finish to start, start to start, finish to finish, and start to finish. We have Gantt chart. In Gantt chart, we have to define activities, graph or bar chart with bar for each project activity that show passage of time. So it is basically the tabular form, a graphical form of the tabular data. So it is more appealing and it is more visually understandable. So normally, for when you are discussing the timelines with your client and with the higher management, you focus on Gantt charts. So Gantt chart is basically uh, like here if you see, you have set of activities and then you have the timeline. So like market research can be done from August to 30th August. Specification will be done once. So here you can see which activities are sequential and which activities are parallel. For example, if you see here, uh, so we have like this activity, software development can be done along with the detailed design. So it can begin before detailed design. So you can assign the relationships and you can also see the timeline of the activities in the Gantt chart. So project network diagrams are basically this kind of the same thing which are used for showing activity sequencing. A project network diagram is basically a systematic display of logical relationships among or sequencing of activities. So there are two types of methods. One is arrow diagramming method, one is precedence diagramming method. Also called activity on a arrow. Project diagrams activities are represented using arrows, nodes or circles are the starting and the finish ending points of the activities and can only show finish to start dependencies. Activities are represented by boxes. Arrows show relationship between these activities, more popular than the previous technique and better at showing different type of dependencies. So basically here if you see, we have uh, arrow diagramming method. So if you see here, normally it is used for showing finish to start diagram, finish to start dependencies. And PDM, basically precedence diagramming method, you can use to show different types of activities and you can also show the different type of dependencies and in these activities. So in network diagram, you will hear multiple things, which is known as path, critical activities, slack. Path is basically sequence of activities that lead from starting node to finishing node. Like you have a starting activity and you have an ending activity. So path will be covering all the activities from starting till end. Critical path is the basically the longest path determines expected project duration. Critical activities which will be on the critical path. Slack means allowable slippage for the path, the difference, the length of the path and the critical path. So slack will be basically the difference between uh, multiple activities, you can say, which activities you can delay and which activities you cannot delay. So the activities that can be delayed, how long can be delayed unless the project is affected, that is known as slack. So this is basically a slack. Slack time is also the amount of delay expressed in units of time that can be tolerated in starting time or completion time of an activity without causing a delay in the completion of project. So slack time is basically the difference between late finish and early early finish. So sequence activity method, one of the most common activity method that is being used is known as critical path method. So critical path method is basically used to calculate the critical activities that you cannot delay, and that is known as critical path method. There are two passes in critical path method. One is a forward pass and one is a backward pass. So when we'll be discussing the diagram, I will be explaining in detail how you can find out the